count down. All right, welcome back to Reinvented, guys. And today I have Stephany. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what you do?
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for having me on your show. My name is Stephanie, and I um, spent 17 years married to two narcissists. So I talk on narcissism and toxic relationships and toxic marriages. I also am a domestic violence attorney, and I speak on all things related to divorcing and parallel parenting with a narcissist. So I'm really glad to be here on the show. I hope my story will inspire or at least give listeners the tools that they need to help heal themselves if you have found yourself in one of these relationships.
I do have to ask, like in terms of healing, do you feel like, I guess maybe, do you feel like you fully, like you can go back to a fully healed state, or did it kind of, I guess, go like off and on days?
Well, I think you can fully heal, but you have what I call trauma wisdom. So you can be healed, but you can take your wisdom that you've learned through the trauma and take it on with you. So you're not the same person anymore. You're a wiser, smarter person.
And then was there any like I guess hobbies you had that like I guess maybe got you through it, like maybe a routine, or like hobbies, I guess, just in general, to kind of, I guess, heal from it in a sense?
Yeah, so hobbies, well, I like to run and cycle. So, like being fit and fitness, I guess suppose that could be a hobby that can help you get through things. Um, and I have children, so really we're a big soccer family. So my life revolves around soccer. I'll,
Yeah, mine does too.
oh, really?
Yeah. Um,
Yes.
what's your like favorite, I guess, favorite position, or maybe favorite teams for soccer?
Well, so I actually am not a soccer player. I ran cross
Or
country, I did track, I was a swimmer, and then I played college volleyball. So I have three boys, and my two boys, they play soccer. They love it. They can talk all things soccer. I still don't understand offsides, I'm still
definitely
learning. But they talk about soccer all the time. So everything I know about soccer and from teams I've learned through them just talking and sharing and, wanting to be the supportive mom.
I would say that's the best way to learn it. Even my dad does the same thing. He doesn't understand it either. He just goes with it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. What do you think people most misunderstand about you?
About me, um, I don't know. Um, I think some people don't understand what it's like to be in a toxic relationship or to be in a relationship with a narcissist until you find yourself in one. Even, there's a lot of legal professionals, judges and attorneys, and even therapists who don't fully understand what it's like to work with a narcissist or to see one, or to be charmed by one. And so I think people don't always understand that. And, along with that, so many people say, well, why don't you leave this relationship? It's complex. It's not as simple as just walking away because there's so many elements and components to it.
do you think it's kind of like the same thing when people tell like domestic violence like survivors like, oh, why didn't you just leave the situation? Like, is it kind
Absolutely.
of like the same thing of like,
Yep. So it's domestic violence. So domestic violence is otherwise known as intimate partner violence or family violence, and it refers to a pattern of abusive behaviors used by one person to gain power and control over another person. So these relationships can be with your spouse, with your partner, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, people who live together. It can be physical abuse, so like hitting, slapping, punching, or using weapons. It can also be emotional or psychological abuse, like verbal threats, intimidation, humiliation, manipulation, all aimed at undermining your self-esteem and your well-being. So, and with domestic violence, there's the domestic violence cycle as well, where it starts out the in the honeymoon phase where everything is great, and then it goes to the devaluation phase, and then oh, I'm sorry phase, but they're not sorry for what they did. They're sorry they got caught, and it's a cycle. The same is true with understanding narcissism. So narcissism is again, it's a cycle. It starts out with the honeymoon phase, and then you go to the devaluation phase, and then love bombing and devaluation, love bombing and devaluation, until there's a final discard. And so you have these cycles that keep you trapped in these relationships. And it's really challenging and difficult to leave when you're in them, because similarly to domestic violence, well, it is the same thing. It's just the person is a narcissist as opposed to just a normal, angry and controlling person. Does that make sense?
yeah,
So a narcissist, in case, your audience doesn't know what a narcissist is, a narcissist personality disorder is characteristics of they have an inflated self-esteem. They have um, a grandiosity. So they have an inflated sense of their own importance, and they believe that they are unique and superior to everyone else. They lack empathy. So they struggle to empathize with the feelings and needs of others. Manipulative behavior. So they manipulate or exploit others to achieve their own goals, even if it's going to cause you harm. They have one of the myths with narcissism is that um, they're very confident, driven people. But really, the truth is that they have a very, very, very fragile ego and a very, very fragile, sensitive self-esteem beneath that big exterior that they like to show the world. Um, so they're easily hurt by criticism, and they seek constant admiration, attention, and validation from others because that's what gives them the fuel they need. Um, And so, you can look at people with narcissistic personality disorder, they have a difficulty maintaining relationships. And so, all of that is domestic violence. What they are doing is domestic violence because even if they aren't hitting or being physical, there still is the emotional and the psychological abuse.
and what would you like say to someone who like wants to get out of that cycle? Like they know that there needs to be a change, but like they don't know how
So,
to do it.
yeah, so that's a good question because it's really hard to get out of these cycles. And, if you see some of your friends and you see that they're in these unhealthy, toxic relationships, and you go up and ask them, why don't you just leave? So it's not that easy because there's what is called a trauma bond. And a trauma bond is what keeps you hooked on that person. So, for instance, a trauma bond, have you heard of Stockholm Syndrome?
Yes.
Okay, so it's pretty much the same thing. You have someone in power and control over you, and there are moments of good times and there are moments of bad times. And so you keep attached to this person because you're constantly wanting those good times. So here's the easy way to understand it. So say I'll use myself with my second husband. He in the beginning was the honeymoon period, and so he said everything I wanted to hear. I love that you're a strong, independent woman. I love that all your friends are strong, independent women. I love that you're an attorney. I love that you're in this position of authority and power, whatever, you're a good mom. You're all these things. But what he was doing was just mirroring me back to me. And then, so that's the honeymoon phase where they show you that they know how to love. And then you have the devaluation phase where they start coming in and criticizing and manipulating and gaslighting and everything that they loved about you in the beginning, they devalue. So in the devaluation phase, it's I hate lawyers. I hate strong, independent women. You guys are all horrible. Your friends are all horrible people. And they just go in and start criticizing all these things. So then it becomes confusing because you knew that, hey, this is what you loved about me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so then you're constantly trying to get that love and admiration back. And so you start going on this cycle of um, uh, love bombing and devaluation. And so another way to look at it is like a drug addiction. So someone who is addicted to drugs, when they first take the drug, they get a certain high, a certain rush, a certain dopamine um, rush. And then they continue to take, hoping to get to that first high, but they never can reach that first high, right? And so, similarly, with being in a trauma bond, you're constantly trying to get that first high because you have experienced, quote, true love. They know how to love. And so you're stuck trying to get back to that first love, but you never can get back to it. And so that's why it's really hard to leave these relationships because you are trauma bonded. And so, in order to really leave them and heal, you have to break that trauma bond. And that takes a lot of internal work.
And was there ever like moments, I guess, like in either of the relationships that you like tried to leave? Like you would maybe like walk away, like try to leave, but would keep coming back. Like I'm guessing because of like the trauma bond, but like
Yep.
you'd like leave for a little bit, come back, and then you finally hit the breaking point of finally actually fully leaving.
Yes. So, yeah, I definitely with my second husband, that happened a lot. So it was 2020. And, remember 2020, COVID-19, the world shut down.
Oh yeah.
And it was very challenging, especially being married to a narcissist during that time, because they already make your life confusing and then throw in COVID-19 and the lockdown. Everything was very confusing. So it was very hard for me to know what was reality, what was really his personality and who he was, and what was just 2020. Very, very confusing. And so almost every weekend, I would leave and go stay with a girlfriend for the weekend because I just couldn't figure out what was going on. He would make remarks and comments and gaslight, and And for those of you who don't know what gaslighting is when you have one version of reality and they have a different version, and they're trying to convince you that your version of what happened didn't happen. So they downplay and minimize, and it gets very, very confusing. So with 2020 and everything that was going on, I found myself almost every weekend leaving and going to my friend's house because I just could not understand what was going on. And then I actually left him and we separated for 2 months during that time. And, they say, and statistically, it takes about 8 or 9 times for a person to leave before they're finally gone for good. And it does, because you become, especially if you're married, your lives become enmeshed. And if you have children, it's even more complex and much harder to leave safely. And usually when there is violence, like physical violence, it's when one of the people are trying to leave the relationship. And so you have to be very, very careful. And only you know when you can leave. Only you know when it is safe enough for you to leave. And it has to be your decision.
And then, like with you said both of your ex-husbands were both narcissists, right?
Uh-huh. Yep.
Did did you kind of like, I guess, maybe meet them in a similar way, or was it like kind of similar both times?
No, you know, there is this myth too that everyone who finds themselves in a narcissistic or toxic relationship came from a broken home or has had um, all these past traumas in your life. So I have a very, very loving, supportive family. My parents have been married for 45 years. They have a beautiful marriage and relationship, and they modeled a healthy marriage and relationship. My first ex-husband, Josh, his parents were the same. They've been married for almost 55 years. They are very healthy, very stable. So we both had modeled healthy relationships. Um, with my first husband, when we got married, it was when I was in law school and I couldn't give him all the validation that he was seeking, all the admiration that he wanted. That's when he started to look outside of the marriage for validation and admiration. And so he would go online and meet women, and that was his thing. That's how he got his narcissistic fuel. That's what kept him going. And so we didn't come from broken families. We didn't come from any of this. So where did it come from? I don't know. He was a covert narcissist. My second husband was when my first husband, he finally walked away with another married woman, um, saying he set me free, which in many ways he did, because I wasn't able to leave him. And so when I thought I had healed and I had manifested my second husband, I got everything I asked for. I wanted a divorced dad with boys because that's what I have. I wanted a, tall, dark, handsome. I went for looks, and a businessman, all these things. And so, when I put that out into the universe to manifest him, I met him a week later. And again, I didn't know he was a narcissist because a lot of times it doesn't really manifest until you are hooked and in it. And so, were there red flags? Yeah, there were. But when you are first dating someone, it's easy to look over those red flags, right? Oh, I noticed these things, but it's probably not as bad, or I can change him. Um, and so for him, I didn't know what was happening. until I was hooked and in that marriage and married. Um, so does that answer your question there?
Yeah, and then also like piggybacking kind of on like I forgot my question. Like kind of I guess piggybacking kind of on like staying in like relationships. Is it like I guess in your experience, but not everyone's experience is like all similar. Do you think like all like narcissists kind of I guess think think similarly but differently at the same time?
I do. And so, in a lot of the healing groups and support groups and stuff, we always say that all the narcissists are reading from the same playbook, from the same manual, because they all act the same way, even sometimes down to the exact same words that are said. Um, and so, yes, there are different types of narcissists, but it's all power and control. It's all, they want their validation. They want constant admiration. And they will do whatever it takes. They will manipulate to get what they want. They will play the victim to get what they want. But it's very, very similar. I've heard so hundreds and hundreds and thousands of stories, and it's the same playbook.
And then also like when it comes to like schools like teaching like any type of like about abuse, like especially mostly it's like always domestic violence, but any type of abuse. Do you think like they kind of like teach it wrong by saying like, oh, it's you're more susceptible if you're from a broken house, broken home, like because I remember in school it was always like, oh, you're more susceptible because you came from somewhere broken, like, because that's what they would tell people, like some kids.
Mm.
And obviously, you don't know everyone's story, but
Yeah.
that's what they would tell people. And
Well, I always tell people that I should be able to walk down the road naked if I want, and it doesn't mean that I'm inviting someone to come and hurt me or sexually assault me or anything like that. I should be able to wear a short skirt if that's what I want. I should be able to go to a topless beach and sit there and not be bothered by anyone. So, no, it doesn't matter what you wear. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter how you dress. Violence, domestic violence, sexual assault. I did sexual assault for a long time as well. Um, it's about power and control. That's it. It's about someone trying to have power and control over you, whether that's through your emotions, whether that is through um, being physical, like trying to physically control you. But I guess I would say sometimes if we are, because of the way we regulate our bodies and we regulate our emotions, for some people, a state of dysregulation or a chaotic relationship, that's familiar to them. So they might seek those out, but it doesn't mean that they're more susceptible. It just means that that's how they grew up. And sometimes when we grow up in a certain environment, to us, that is a normal environment. And to put them somewhere else where there's no chaos, where there's no drama, where there's no trauma, that's foreign. But that all has to do with a lot of other things that I don't even know all the psychology behind all of that.
oh yeah, definitely. So like being in these like types of relationships, did a lot of it like start out with like? Because I know you said this before, but it started out with like a lot of like compliments, right? Like kind of like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
you're good at this, I like this. What do you think, I guess at the beginning of either of those relationships, what do you think the best one you got was?
The best compliment?
Yeah, like or kind of like maybe where you started to notice it was like kind of going maybe downhill a little bit there.
Yeah, I think hmm, well, I think it comes to becoming aware of the red flags. You know, they say that it's a red flag because it's a warning for us. And so at one point I was managing a winery, two wineries. And so I was around alcohol all the time. We were brewers, distillers, winemakers. And so being in that environment, people were always drinking. And so with my second husband, when he was drinking, I didn't really see that as an issue because my whole world revolved around drinking and alcohol. But it became an issue when I started finding hidden vodka bottles all over the place because I didn't know that he was actually drinking way more than he showed me, if that makes sense. So that's when I started to like, oh, okay, maybe this is a problem.
Yeah, and then,
Whereas in the beginning, I didn't see it as a problem because I didn't see all the vodka drinking on the side. I just saw the regular drinking, like, people drink at wineries and breweries.
and then like what would you say like to someone who's like they see the red flags but they kind of like they're either kind of like I guess maybe ignoring them in a sense or just like oh like I can deal with this like but before it like because then it comes a problem like what would you say to someone who's kind of like they see it and they don't know what to do in a sense.
Yeah, so I would say I was there. Like I said with the alcohol, the red flags are there to warn us of of what could potentially be make or break deals for your relationship. But for me, and I know for a lot of people who find themselves in narcissistic relationships, it's because of the trauma bond, like what we talked about earlier. We can see the red flags, but there's something in us that's like, no, but they're good people, or they can change, or I will make them change, or I can help them change. And so even though you see it, we're still in denial about it. So I would say if you are seeing the red flags, you have to be honest with yourself because and love yourself enough to say no, these are deal breakers. Because then you'll find yourself 5, 10, 15 years down the road still stuck in a toxic relationship, unhealthy relationship, and you're going nowhere in your life.
And then like because I well when I think of it there's always like I would say good and bad days right like there were probably like days where you're like okay maybe I'm just like overthinking it or maybe like because then there would be the bad days that'd be like okay that kind of proves what I'm thinking like did you have like you're like I know I have a there's a problem here but this good day kind of
Yep, and
back
so
that
that's
thought away.
Yep, and so that's what keeps you stuck in the trauma bond because it's the intermittent reinforcement is what it's called. And so yes, there are days when super critical, super mean, all this stuff, but you know that he knows how to be nice. You know that she knows how to be nice. And so sometimes you just wait it out. Like maybe they go and lock themselves in their room for 3 days and then they come out and it's like, okay. And then you find yourself apologizing. I'm so sorry for whatever I did to put you, make you feel bad. And so, again, it's all about them. It's not about you or your feelings or what's going on. Um, but yeah, that's what keeps you stuck because if it was always bad, no one would ever stay, right? So they have to have that positive intermittent reinforcement in there. Otherwise, they would have no relationship, and they know this.
And then like what would be a piece of advice you would give your like past self, who is in this situation, like you from now to your past self?
Well, I would say, you in the first marriage, because there was a lot of cheating and a lot of affairs and stuff, I didn't look at it as abuse. I didn't look at it as domestic violence. And even me, who that is my background, was helping domestic violence survivors, through the legal system and as an advocate. And so, but I didn't see myself being in an abusive relationship because I think so many of us, we say, oh, he's just a cheater. She's just a cheater. Well, that is abuse. You told them to stop. You told them how it makes you feel. And they don't do that. And they continue to go seek validation through other relationships outside of your relationship. And so I also, because we both came from really good families, and everyone's like, well, just work on your marriage. But you can't work on your marriage or your relationship if the other person is not willing to work on it as well. And so, my advice to my younger self for my first marriage would be, Stephany, it would have been okay to divorce him when you first found out about all this stuff. Stephany, you were worthy of so much more. And don't get stuck in the guilt and the shame of having overstayed, but you can leave. And see, and no one told me that. Everyone told me just try to make it work, just make it work, just, maybe pray harder, maybe do these things. And so I kept trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And I should have just left. But I didn't have anyone telling me to just leave. Everyone was saying, just fix it. But you can't, especially if the other person's not willing to work on it and to fix it. And narcissists don't change. I mean, it's such a tiny, tiny, tiny percent that actually become aware and do the hard work that requires them to change. But they don't, because that in order to change and to do the hard work, that means you have to look at yourself, right? You have to go internal. And if you hate yourself, and if you um, have such a low self-esteem and hate yourself and all these things, it's much easier to just move on to the next person than it is to sit and do the hard work.
Yeah. And then like when it comes to like any type of abuse, like physical, mental, do you think there's like 'cause you did say it was like it is hard work for them, but do you think that like a lot of people stay because they want to like work it out, like the other
Yeah,
person might want to stay to work it out?
I think most people are hopeful that they'll change. And especially if you have, you're in the trauma bond, there's the intermittent reinforcement, the devaluation, all this stuff that keeps you hooked. And then they might say, well, I will work on myself. Well, I will change. They don't. I had my ex, I we were separated for 2 months in 2020, and I gave him a list of things that he needed to do. I said, well, you need to go to rehab, you need to do an abuser recovery course, you need to do all these things. He signed up for them and he did them, but there wasn't an actual change. It was more like he signed up and went to the meetings and sat there, okay, I'm making her happy, but there was no real change. He went back to drinking. He went back to being abusive. He went back to manipulating. He went back to all these things. And so, I mean, there was probably a period of 3 months that were great, but then, he went back to what he was.
And then like in terms of like your support system, do you think they like saw the like what was going on and tried to step in and tell you like and like maybe like
Yes.
what did they say in a sense?
Yeah, so I have a very, very solid group of friends and family and stuff, and they did. They said, Stephany, he should not be talking to you like that, um, and and stuff. But again, the trauma bond is it's a very strong, powerful bond that keeps you connected and stuck. And so even if my girlfriends are saying, "Oh, Stephany, he's blah 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 blah," you see the negative, but you also see the good times too. And that's what makes it really, really challenging because you know that it's not always negative. Yes, he said those things. And in that moment when you just see it as one thing in the moment, it's easier to stay with them. But when you are able to take a step back and see everything in the totality, it's horrible. He's ruined every holiday, he's ruined every birthday party, he's ruined every date, he's ruined all these things because it's all about him. And if it's not all about him, this is for me anyways, then he would just throw the biggest tantrum. And so yeah, in the moment, it's easy to just see it as, oh, it was just one little thing. And so I think if you're trying to help your friends, is they really have to step away, to step out of the relationship a bit and look in and see that, oh, there's a pattern here, there's a cycle here, and it's not just one little criticism or one little manipulation. It is all in the totality. And when you can see that, or when they can see that, I think it is easier um, to help them get away, but also giving them some sort of tool as well to help with the healing and to break the trauma bond. So for myself, I'm an EFT practitioner, and EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. And it's a healing modality where you tap. I don't, have you heard of EFT?
I think I did like one time.
Yeah, so you tap on the meridian points of your body, and what you're doing is you're rewiring your brain because after you've been in a traumatic relationship, your brain rewires itself. And so we need to rewire your brain for the positive and to tell your body that it's safe, that you're safe, that you can let go of a lot of these things. And so for EFT, when I work with people who've been through traumatic relationships or narcissistic abuse, um, the first round is really sitting with the big, heavy emotions. It's kind of like the venting um, and just acknowledging them and feeling them. And then we do a round of releasing and letting go. And then I do a third round of tapping into the person you want to become. So, for instance, say you have a lot of anxiety because you've been in this traumatic relationship. And the anxiety, even though you are out of the relationship, a lot of anxiety is still coming up. And so I would tap with you and we would talk about the anxiety. Like, because anxiety is good in some cases. It's showing you that it's warning you that you're unsafe, right? But now that you are free, you need to tell your body that you are safe now and you don't need the anxiety. So now you can release it and let it go and have a life free of anxiety. So this when I'm working with people who've been through these heavy traumatic relationships, I do a lot of EFT with them to help rewire their brain and reset their body and their thinking.
And then also like within like with doing that, do you find like the person like leaves the relationship and then maybe they like maybe not go into a new relationship like boyfriend girlfriend type of relationship, but like a different type of like maybe like work relationship or maybe a friendship in a sense, and they kind of like put I guess projects their traumas onto other people, like maybe they don't feel comfortable like talking to someone else.
Um, you know, I would imagine all people do that. But really, when you have been in these traumatic relationships, you really need to take the time to go within and to heal. Because if you don't heal, you will keep repeating the same patterns. You'll keep calling in the same people to show you the same lessons. And until you heal and learn those lessons, you'll keep repeating them, if that makes sense.
And then also like with like I guess in a sense for like you leaving, did like and I guess maybe like some advice you'd want to share with someone, like did you have like since leaving, did you come up with like a new routine for how you kind of wanted to shape like your day, your life?
Yeah, so I just wanted to live a peaceful life and a peaceful life with my children. Um, and so for me, I I really had to get out of the victim story. So, you know, as survivors, as people who've gone through these narcissistic relationships or, you know, domestic violence, abuse of any sort, um, we can get stuck in the victim story. And I found myself stuck in the victim story for a really long time. And it wasn't until I was able to shift my perspective and to see my story not as the victim, but as the heroine of my story, then I wasn't able, then I could finally see the lessons and heal. And so, and take my power back. And so, you know, I wanted my children, I want them to say, hey, my mom is a confident person. My mom is, she has a lot of self-worth and a lot of self-esteem, and she got out of these relationships. Um, so on a day to day, yes, I wanted peace in my home. I wanted peace in my life. I do tapping almost every day. I do journaling and a lot of meditation as well, um, because that's what I want in my life.
And then like was like when you were in like that situation back then, did you like see your life as it is now, or did you kind of like I guess get kind of in like a victim like mindset of I don't like I'm not going anywhere.
Well, you know, you don't think all that when you're in it. You know, there's this term called future faking. And so you you think you're going to have a future and a life with this person. You think this person is going to one day wake up and that loving person that you fell in love with is going to present themselves and they're going to be there. They're going to stop drinking. They're going to stop name calling. They're going to start treating you right. And so you get stuck in this. Like I used to say, I fell in love with his potential. And after 4 years, his potential never went anywhere. We're still in the same place. And when you're in a relationship, you should constantly be growing and challenging each other. And we weren't. We were still stuck here. And even now, you know, when I go back and I look at his life, he's still stuck. He's not going anywhere. But I have chosen to move on and to heal and to do the hard work and now to share my story so that other people who are in these situations can say, can see that there really is freedom when you get out, because sometimes we get so stuck in our head of that maybe this is all there is, but it's not. And anyone who's in these relationships right now, you can get out, you can break the trauma bond, you can heal, and you can find true freedom.
And like also like was there ever like I guess maybe like a turning point of where you're like you kind of like thought you're like some like the thoughts you were having like maybe like leaving them you're like this isn't like a normal like mindset to have like there's obviously a problem here of
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And that, going back to 2020, that was a lot of the confusion. Like, was it 2020? Was it him? Was it me? Like, they keep you very confused. And that's one of the things with a narcissist, when they keep their mask on, they're constantly changing who they are and what they're doing. And so it's very, as soon as you think you figured them out, they change. And so they like to be a mystery. They like to keep you confused. That's what gaslighting is. That's the cognitive dissonance. It keeps you confused. So you stay. Because as soon as the mask comes off, you see them for who they really are. And you want to get out of there as quick as you can. Um, and so yeah, so there were multiple times, especially when it wasn't very great, when I was like, gosh, this is not what I want. This is not what I imagined my relationship and my family would be like. I want a partner who helps me. I want a partner who challenges me. I want a partner who is going somewhere, not just stuck doing nothing. So yeah, when I go back and read through my journals, it's very much like, what do I do? Like sometimes you just feel super trapped, because it is difficult at that time to imagine what life would be like without them, because they make it so, it's not that it's great with them. It's just the trauma bond. It's just the trauma bond that keeps you there.
and like what do you think your biggest challenge was at that point or maybe like now in your life like kind of doing the
Uh,
work you did.
the biggest challenge was, really accepting that they don't change and they won't change, and, um, accepting that you were stuck in a trauma bond, and being able to forgive yourself for overstaying, releasing the guilt, the shame. Um, yeah.
And then what do you think the most important lesson you learned it throughout?
So, there's been, I don't know if it's one important lesson, but when I was able to see my story through a different lens, when I was able to make that shift to become the hero of my story and not the victim, then instead of looking at these two men as monsters trying to destroy my life, I could see them as teachers who were there to teach me the lessons. And so I can say, okay, thank you, Josh. He was my first husband. Thank you, Josh, for showing me that I need boundaries in a relationship. And I can look at Jace, and although I went in that relationship with boundaries, he kept pushing the boundaries and pushing them and pushing them. So really, I had no boundaries. And so I can say, thank you, Jace, for showing me that my boundaries need to be firm. I can go back to Josh and say, thank you, Josh, for showing me that I am worthy of so much more. And thank you, Jace, for showing me I am worthy of so much more. So, everyone's lessons are going to be different. but for me, those were big lessons. Like I am worthy, and boundaries, and and once I was able to see the lessons and look at these men not as monsters but as teachers, then then I could really heal, and I could forgive. And they always say that forgiveness is for you, it's not for them. And forgiveness is it's sometimes it's constant. But until I saw them as teachers here to show me lessons, I couldn't forgive them. I didn't have compassion for them and their what they were going through. But now I can say I have forgiven, and I am more compassionate and understanding, although I want nothing to do with them.
And like also, you said you were like helping people like through like domestic violence, like even throughout these. Was there like any like particular moment you kind of realized like maybe these people like stories apply to me as well?
Well, once I started having children, I was no longer really in that field, although I have all the background and the training and stuff. Um, it really wasn't until I was able to completely separate myself from them, going no contact, and then going back and looking at my story and looking at everything that happened. Because, like I said in the beginning, my first husband, he cheated a lot, and so I didn't see that as domestic violence. I saw that as, oh, he's a cheater. And I think a lot of us say that, like we say, oh, they're just a cheater, they just cheat. Well, no, that's abuse. That's domestic violence. That's emotional abuse. That's psychological abuse. You asked them to stop, and they didn't. And so that was a big one to me, because he wasn't physically violent, but there was all the cheating, and so I had to try to wrap that around. Like, no, Stephany, it was an abusive marriage.
And then was there like I guess things that like, people that like you thought were kind of like just normal relationship stuff like that every couple would do or every person in a relationship would do that, outside people were like no one really does that, like that's weird. And then maybe you get kind of mad at them like or not, maybe not mad but like no, this is normal.
Um, you might have to re-ask me the question. I'm not quite understanding it.
So like it doesn't have to be from like your support system either, but like were there times that were like maybe they did something that you thought was probably like normal relationship stuff, maybe like I'm trying to like think of a good one there, but like that they
Um,
thought.
no, if they everything they did that was, again, I had modeled growing up healthy relationships. I've been in healthy relationships. And so no, I would see the stuff that they're doing, and I would know that that's not right.
And like do you think that there are people who are in like there's a toxic like relationships that they think that it's a normal behavior that that person's doing?
I think that, again, I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist, but I think we seek out what is familiar to us. And so if someone grew up in a toxic family, a toxic environment is normal for them. Um, and so they may or may not see anything wrong with it. You see things wrong with it because it's not right, but it is more familiar. I guess. Um, but I really can't touch a whole lot on that because I'm not, my background is law and not psychology. But
And then what is one piece of advice like you'd give like anyone, just like maybe someone who comes up to you and asks you like
I
what
would
would the advice be?
I would say trust your intuition. If you're in a relationship and it feels off, like if there's something that doesn't feel right, even if you don't know what it is, then talk to a friend, talk to someone you trust, but trust your intuition because that's why we have it. Our intuition is there to warn us. When it's telling us something, and really pay attention to the red flags because so many of us we get lost in that honeymoon phase, where everything's wonderful and perfect. I can overlook some of these red flags. No, because some of those red flags will be the reason that you leave later on. So just don't even go there.
And do you think like in terms of like keeping yourself productive, maybe not not to distract yourself, but like just kind of keeping yourself productive and helping other people getting your story out there, what time of day do you think you do that the best?
I'm a morning person. So I get up early. I feel like I think clearer in the morning. My best thoughts come in the morning. I like to work in the morning and then take, afternoon, take the afternoon off.
Let's see. What are three books you like and why?
um, Three books that I would recommend on this topic, or just three books I like in general?
Either one, if you kind of just depend on what you feel like.
Okay, well, I will say if if you are wondering if you are in an abusive relationship and you're wondering why this person is treating you a certain way, any book by Lundy, I'm forgetting his last name. I'll have to message you so you put it in the chats. It's called, one of his books is called Angry and Controlling Men, and another book is called Why Did He Do That? Um, so I would recommend both of those books. They're both on audio as well. To answer some of the psychology questions you were talking about, there's a great book called The Body Keeps Score, and um, another book written by Oprah and this other trauma doctor, and it's called What Happened to You. Those are both very, very good books to touch on some of the psychology questions you were asking me. Um, and then my overall favorite book, I used to love The Count of Monte Cristo. I would read that every single year. Um, I don't know if it's my favorite, but I guess I like it because of the adventure and the boats and the pirates and loyalty and the lessons.
And then are there other like podcasts you like to listen to? And they don't have to be like related at all. There's just other podcasts you like to listen to.
Yeah, I do. So I do listen to a lot of podcasts on narcissism and stuff. I like a lot of parenting podcasts as well, like parenting with boys, because I have three little boys. And my youngest has a genetic disorder, so there are a couple disability podcasts that I follow as well that I like to listen to.
And then the last question is, where can listeners find you online?
So right now I am on Facebook and I'm on LinkedIn, and I can get you those links as well. I My website is not done yet, But as soon as I get that finished, I can give you a link for that as well.
And thank you for being on the show today. I do hope you
Absolutely.
have a great rest of your day.
Well,
And yeah,
thank you for having me, and thank you for all the insightful questions. And it was a pleasure and an honor to be on your show today.
thank you. Yeah. All right. Is there anything we wanted to end with? Because I think I forgot how to end my podcast.
Well, I would say, yeah, like I said before, um, if if you feel like you're stuck in your life and you're not moving forward and you're stuck in your victim story, I challenge you to see your story through a different lens. Put yourself as the hero of your story. Find the lessons, heal, release, and find true, break the patterns and find true freedom, because true freedom is on the other side.
All right. And thank you guys for watching Reinvented today. And until next week, thank you so much.
Bye.